Hey guys, Angus here, and today I'm joined with the lovely Serena, who's used to be here in Australia, but now she's over there in lovely Spain, I believe it is. Serena, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Awesome, thank you. Good to have you with us. So, for those of you listening, what I want to do today is just share some insight into the awesome transformation that Serena has had with working with me via my online coaching. So, as you can imagine, with something like that, there's a bit of distance between us, but hey, she was still able to utilize internet and my knowledge and stuff like that to create some awesome physical and internal change that's going to last a lifetime for herself. So to give you a bit of background context as to where Serena came from, so like many of you ladies probably listening, you could probably relate to this, but Serena was someone who was taking a lot of action, but then struggled with the big thing which is called consistency, meaning your ability to take action continuously towards one thing and enjoy it and therefore see it through. So Serena was suffering with lots of ups and downs of what she was doing, but then as you can probably imagine, that caused her a bit of disempowerment, not feeling too crash hot with what was going on, and therefore gradually sabotaging her efforts and not really seeing any sort of success over the period of time that she was going at it solo. So before we started, those were obviously big problems to her. But Serena, why don't you share, I guess, some of the impact that that was having to yourself personally, making all this action but not actually getting real sort of tangible results from all the efforts.
Um, well, I guess it was very discouraging and awful in everyday life because, even if everything else is going for you, if you can't achieve in that area and you just don't know what to do. And I guess that's the main point is if you don't see your results, you don't know if you're doing the right thing, so it's very difficult to stick to consistent action. Whereas if you have a plan that that works, it's much easier to stick to it.
Exactly, bingo. So, like like me, just like yourself, you're a foodie as well. So you love food, but then the things that you were doing obviously came down to eat this, this, and this, but don't eat all of this to get results. So why don't you share how that was a bit of a struggle for you, especially with trying to establish real balance within food for yourself before we actually started coaching?
Yeah, well, it was very difficult because when I was in Australia as well, I obviously developed a gluten sensitivity, so I had to stop eating any glutinous foods,
Yeah.
and that made it difficult. It also makes it difficult, socially. It's getting much easier now because there are much more gluten-free products out there, and then I had trouble with preservatives and IBS, and my hormones weren't quite right. And I guess from that stemmed then my insecurity of eating anything because I didn't really know what's going to be good anymore at all. And I didn't want to feel shit all the time. I didn't want to be putting on weight all the time and have no energy. And I think the biggest impact it also has, I mean, when you're at home, you can kind of eat whatever you want. You only buy the things that you really want to eat, and then you can stick to it. And I like to think I'm a fairly disciplined person. But when you go out, that's when it gets hard as well because you always feel like you're an outsider. You don't understand why everyone else can, have a good time and eat whatever and they're okay, and you're not. And I think that was probably the hardest part emotionally.
Exactly, that's right. And it's a funny thing within that because it's nutrition, which is the big guns for anyone's goals, whether it is to lose weight, whether it's just to solely lose, fat, whether it's to gain muscle, whatever. It's nutrition, which is pretty much everything. So you can be making all the exercise effort underneath the sun, but then in your case, and like in my case, I know that when I was struggling big time with nutrition, I would often punish myself with exercise, kind of beating myself up for the binges that I was having. So it wasn't a really good cycle at all. But if we fast forward to where you are now, like in terms of some of your stats, you're down a solid 6 kilos and you've lost over 30 centimeters from all over your body. But in no way, like in terms of like where you're at, like you were pretty much what we'd call a decent type body, but now you're absolutely amazing. But in terms of just what's been restored, what has been absolutely amazing to see is your relationship with nutrition. So why don't you just share what some of the big things have been, I guess, for you in terms of what's changed compared to where you were then with how you are now with your relationship with food?
Yeah, I mean that's probably the biggest win. I mean, yeah, it's great to lose some weight and get some fitness gains and all that, but that was probably my biggest win is that I can eat whatever I want, and that's really great because I don't think on Saturday when I don't want to go out because it's going to be so much effort trying to not eat all these things and trying to explain to everyone why I'm not eating those things. And
Mm,
it's so much easier now. You go out and you have something or you don't, and if you don't have it, you really choose not to have it and you feel good about it. Or if you have less, or you just try a little, maybe the husband orders a dessert and you have a spoonful and it's all good.
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I think that's the biggest win. And even I've actually found it's cheaper to eat this way because you can save on groceries here and there,
Exactly. That's
and
it.
you're much more flexible. You come home, you make an easy meal instead of having to worry all the time, or even at work. If you
Mm,
don't have time to have lunch, you have a sandwich, and it's okay. So
exactly. That's it.
it just takes a lot of the stress out of the day, especially if you're working a lot as well. Then it just makes it so much easier. Yeah.
Because typically with most of us, we tend to focus on what's going in and the timing of when we're eating those meals. So typically eating after 6 or after 8 o'clock was deemed as bad, and you might have been able to relate to that as well. Eating sugar or eating fast food and stuff or any sort of junk food you classify as bad. But really now it seems that you've really adapted the focus of not stressing out about what's going in, but really just emphasizing how much you're putting in and then taking ownership upon what you actually want to eat to meet that. So why don't you just quickly share how that's allowed you to just be consistent without it actually feeling like a chore, but actually something you enjoy eating on a day-to-day basis like that?
Well, I guess I found that I really feel much more satisfied, and I
Mm,
think I obsess about it a lot less
mm,
because it's just not something that worries me anymore. I have what I want. I make sure that I stick to my macros, and some
mm,
days I don't. But
exactly.
it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. And so I guess then you obsess less, and then you don't have to have more chocolate or more. I don't know, whatever the weakness is for me.
Mm.
I am in Switzerland.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Awesome. So, for those of you listening, really some of the big key things there is that if you relate to some of the things that Serena has said, or even what I've shared with a little bit of an insight into what I used to struggle with, some of the big things you should take action upon are within nutrition is actually making that shift from what's going in towards how much, because your body needs a certain amount of fuel to trigger the results that you want. If you can consistently meet that, you will see some awesome change. Another thing to really make sure that you'll need as well is focus, because if you're trying to focus on a million different things, it makes it really stressful, doesn't it, Serena? So, like, by us actually keeping your focus really simple, it enabled you to be consistent, like, with ease. Then the other side of it that you'll need as well in terms of taking action with nutrition is really having what's called variety, because if you don't have variety, you can get bored. When we get bored, this is when we bail, where we fall off the wagon, where we beat ourselves up, and it causes us to really develop a negative relationship with food. Um, but with those things in mind, this is obviously what's changed, Serena from the inside out. It was actually what allowed me to lose my 40 plus kgs years back when I was starting out my journey. So if you're actually interested, in terms of actually having some one-to-one help with, learning that yourself and actually being coached like Serena has been, get in touch. But Serena, from yourself, just the last couple of words, why don't you just share, I guess, a word of knowledge or a word of encouragement for anyone listening from yourself being someone that's just finished up your coaching with me?
I guess thinking back to before I started with you, something I would say it's definitely worth it. It's an absolute life changer because when you think you've researched it all and you really do know it all and there's no more you can learn and it's just basically a hopeless situation, there is hope. And
Mm.
yeah,
That's
it,
awesome.
it,
Thank you, my friend. But let's give everyone a wave. Thanks for your time, my friend. And to everyone listening, I'll catch you next time in the Boss Fitness world. Haha.